Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What's up, Canada and beyond? Thank you for tuning in here again tonight. Uh, wow, what a year. 2024 is kicking off with a bang. There is so much going on. It's not hard to tell that it's an election year and a whole lot of other stuff going on. So this year we're going to be, kind of running with it, going after all of the things that they don't want you to look at, and the stories they don't want you to hear, and to try and clear some of the noise, eliminate some of the insanity. Last night's show was maybe a little bit dark by some aspects of coming into the new year with great enthusiasm, but I'm a firm believer that you have to walk out of the dark into the light, and it was important for me to set the foundation for people to understand some of the things to be careful of. So there was a lot in there last night that is relevant to avoiding situations. So that was kind of some of the preparedness and tools for discernment that I wanted people to think about a little bit and hear, with some of the shenanigans that are sure to follow over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to start moving a little bit closer towards the light. I know some of you guys may have seen an announcement that I put out earlier this afternoon. Big event coming up on Saturday night, a panel of some real heavyweights from the not just our media community, but the international community. There's stuff going on in Canada that is going uh, not going under the radar, shall we say? And this some of this stuff, is because of the work that we've been doing collectively. I mean all people fighting for freedom and what's right in Canada, and the tides are turning, and there's been some really good evidence of that. One of the things that triggered me earlier this week was seeing Trudeau's um, end of the year speech, and I was privileged enough to be in some meetings today with some international people, and that didn't go again unnoticed. People are seeing the cracks. People are seeing the fault lines, the crumbling of. What a lot of us call cabal, the one world order, new world order, whatever it is that you know it as, it's absolutely coming apart at the seams, and we know how entrenched so many of the infiltrators are in Canada, and they're in real panic mode. And we're going to be kind of furthering some of the education on what you guys need to know, the important definitions and understandings. Um, we're going to hear from some stuff from Whitney Webb and Glenn Beck here tonight. Both of these people are on the front lines of digesting some of the deepest, darkest corners of the swamp. And the title of tonight's show, Black Swans or Swamp Ducks, is kind of indicative of where we're going to go. They're using this term black swans events all over the public square. And that's, I've been getting a lot of questions. What do I think it is? What do I think it is? What do I think it is? Well, we're going to dive into a little bit of that here tonight, what it could be referring to, and some of it's just going to be making sense of stuff everybody knows already, but some of it's going to be connecting some pretty significant dots, and this again all ties into the difficult times ahead for the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and Trudeau's, and Biden's, and this is a time to put our foot on the gas. And so that's kind of what Saturday is going to be. You guys are going to hear from, like I said, from some international heavyweights, talking about a specific event that is going on here in Canada that absolutely is mortifying the entire liberal establishment. Uh, but I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show. First off, I got to do my due diligence, because without the people that are running across the ticker there on the bottom below, none of this would be possible moving forward, let alone being able to grow. And that comes from working with like-minded people. Guys, we aren't just boycotting the cabal. We are literally taking money away from them permanently. Permanently. If you aren't a part of the Patriot Switch movement yet, click on the link below, find a link on our website, but definitely check it out. What's going to happen, you'll fill in some information, and somebody from my team that I know and trust is going to reach out and talk to you and explain to you exactly what it is, what we do, what we represent. And this is one of the things that we see moving forward as going to be the most effective part of taking apart the cabal. We are taking away the money that funds them. That is the only language that they understand. So check that out. Um, Now, to get into what we're talking about, what I'm talking about today, I'm not trying to be cryptic. It's a lot to wrap up. So black swan events are typically a term reserved for the financial sector. It was referred to a lot with the 2008 housing crisis, when the stock markets crash. It's like the red flag for Wall Street and the stock markets, that there's a crash, whether it's natural or manufactured. That remains to be determined. And most of us are intuitively aware that none of that is, or very rarely is it actually natural. So that started me into looking what could they potentially be referring to. A lot of people are really familiar with the fact that in Canada we have a housing bubble, and it's in not great shape. So um, there's all kinds of predictions of a financial collapse within the housing bubble when it bursts in Canada. It's not hard to imagine or picture that. Looks like looks like we might be having a little bit of trouble with Rumble, guys. Bear with me for a second here. Um, Not sure what's going on. I will. Let me check this out here for a second, guys. Bear with me. Bear with me. Gotta get Rumble going. Okay, well, hopefully that fixes it and it's coming through on Rumble in just a second. I hate when that happens. um, so I'm gonna kind of be watching that screen here for a second. So hopefully that comes through right away and it gets going over there. Rumble has been, like everybody else, getting a ton of different attacks. Like like Twitter, anybody that's trying to do what's right or allow free speech. Looks like I've got a spam or two. Wow, we're just really special tonight, aren't we? We're getting all the attention. um, hmm. And I still don't see my Rumble feed coming up, guys. I am so sorry for the distraction and whatever else is making things go sideways for me here. Hate when this happens. Looks like it's coming back on. Okay. Okay. Rumble is up. Everything else is up. I'm not going to ask you to share this because it's been a disaster. Maybe a little bit later towards the end. Yeah. Uh, it's going to be a couple of seconds of delay here, guys, but Rumble is up on streaming now, and we haven't gotten to the really good stuff yet. But to kind of recap for those on Rumble, the liberal establishment is losing their marbles. They are, every single one of them, and all of their sycophants, clone troopers, zombies, and drones are attacking everybody and everything, at a level that I have not seen in a very, very long time. I 100% believe that this is directly on point from Trudeau's end of the year speech, where he was already dismissing the boogeyman that is us demanding an exit to the World Economic Forum and the United Nations. Every single liberal, every single supporter, donor, sycophant, clone trooper of the liberals is out on full assault mode to try and denounce us for asking questions, or what more specifically is the petition by Leslyn Lewis to be read in Parliament at the end of February if we get enough signatures. And it is going up around the neighborhood of 6,000 or 7,000 signatures a day. But this is what has the establishment petrified. International heavy hitters are seeing this fear in the liberal establishment, and now it's time for us to hit the gas on that. So last night we talked about, for the people that missed the first part, we talked about things to avoid, traps. They're setting traps. Do not get caught in the keyboard warrior revolutionaries. You will be held accountable for those you keep company with. So if anybody, anywhere comes to you with hints or tones or of violence, walk away. Walk away immediately. So that was kind of things to watch, things to consider to deal with the keyboard warrior Call of Duty crowd that is looking for nonsense and shenanigans, because that is exactly what the left wants. That is the point and purpose of the Obama Doom End of Days movie, was to put it in our minds that this is how things are going to go, because this is how they see it going. Do not play into that in any iota. So tonight we're going to be breaking down and unpacking a little bit of some of the correct terminology. We're at a point here now where understanding that we don't have to all represent the same thing, but we do have to get better with our cause of purpose. We need to engage in the same missions, to the same goals, and start to get a little bit better at cooperating, not necessarily putting on each other's pom-poms and hats, but cooperating and taking on some missions and getting some things done. And to do that, with some of the upcoming battles that are coming, this first clip that I'm going to play for you is Glenn Beck, and I'll drop the links into the chat so you guys can go and watch the whole thing. Highly recommend it. But this five minutes of this clip is really going to set the foundation for what we're going to hear from Witney Webb after that. So without further ado, I will start this clip from Glenn Beck, and then we'll dig into that a little bit before we hit the juicy stuff with Witney Webb.
Absolutely sick of come into play, and I'm sick of them because people don't know really what they are. First one, stakeholder, okay, and public-private partnership. These both go hand in hand. So what is a stakeholder? Well, I'll tell you here in just a second. Public, that's the government, and this is business. Public-private partnership. The government should never be. Why are so many liberals and progressives suddenly they hate corporations, but suddenly they're in love with it because they partner with the government? They might think the government is going to bring them down and hold them. I can guarantee you these people are going to be running the government. They are.
Exactly. Public-private partnerships. If anybody can't put two and two together on that, the Germans in 1939 were public-private partnerships. That is by definition fascism, and this is going to get better.
Already are. Stakeholder. This means everybody has a dog in the fight for any given issue. For example, let's talk just about Facebook, okay? Are you a stakeholder in Facebook? Well, kind of. I mean, you are part of it, but that's really not what they're doing. Woven in between the multiple stops along the entire thing are stakeholders. Facebook has a partner, Amazon Cloud Service. I'm guessing I'm making these up, but Google Ads, that's another partner. They have sponsors. those people have the banks that they're responsible, insurance companies, lawyers, name it. Everybody has a stake in this company. That's the way public-private partnerships work. So you have all of these people and all of these individual companies all have another public-private partnership with the US government or the global government. Now, let me make this clear. The government should not be in any business, period. But they are. But we have something in the US Constitution that stops any kind of shenanigans here, and that is the Bill of Rights. Okay? The Bill of Rights.
Now, I know a lot of you folks are in Canada, and you're going to be looking at this and going, oh, well, that's America. Everything here is parallel. Everything here is parallel. They have the Bill of Rights. We had a Bill of Rights. They're worded differently, but in essence, what we're looking at here is the tactics and the strategies that they are using to run around reality and implement this literal fascism.
That's what's supposed to stand between these two things, keeping them separate. There are things the government cannot do. If you choose to do business with those businesses and they want to take your right of privacy away, that's fine. But if they ever really violate things, then you can run to the government. But if the government is in bed with those companies, who do you call when things go wrong? Who's the arbiter of right and wrong? All of these stakeholders, they have a collected interest. Now, listen, Facebook makes a decision. People don't like it. Well, then Amazon might get pressure here and say, you know, what are you doing helping Facebook? Google Ads, what are the sponsors doing with Facebook? The banks can cut off their money. This is the problem. If you don't think that's not happening with Elon Musk, you're sadly mistaken. And do you think if Elon Musk would have played the game, if he would have just said, yeah, I'm with all of this stuff, do you think he'd be in trouble like he is now? They're threatening his banks. The government is threatening him. Sponsors are threatening. It's not disconnected. It's public-private partnerships and stakeholders. It is an entirely new kind of capitalism.
Not only is it an entirely new kind of capitalism, it is also the foundation of the entire ESG, DEI foundation. All of the big corporations are now in bed with the governments in order to create these public-private partnerships where the governments literally control what goes on with the businesses.
How many times have you heard the Biden administration invoke the words public-private partnership? There's a really specific reason for that. The government invokes those words every time they cannot do something because of the Bill of Rights. They might want to censor speech, but the First Amendment doesn't let them. So they partner with Google, Facebook, and Twitter, and then just urge them to do it. Put it another way, the government invokes stakeholders and public-private partnerships every time they want to do something unconstitutional. This is the rationale empowering the gravest assault on American free speech we've ever seen. But now let me take you a step further, places where you probably didn't know. I'm going to show you an organization that is actively working on undermining our First Amendment right now. Here's a quote from a whistleblower on whether they worried about the First Amendment violations. Quote, "They did not. The ethos was that if you get away with it, it's legal. And there were no First Amendment concerns because we have a public-private partnership." That's the word they use to disguise those concerns. Public people can do things public servants can't do. Public servants can provide leadership and coordination.
Now, I want to pause here for just a second and touch on some of the differences. Canada doesn't have a First Amendment, so our free speech is not protected. But what I do want to point out is that every time any one of these elected officials starts to run into trouble or they're asked questions, they too will immediately start regurgitating the public-private benefit partnerships and the benefits, and how they're working so hard for our best interests and providing exactly that leadership and coordination.
For the private sector, right? Wait until you see it in operation. Back in a minute.
So that's the first part that I really wanted you guys to think about and to hear the how that public-private partnership is broken down, and how that is literally any corporation or partner that wants to go around the end zone of the rules and the laws. And this is why we get those appearances where uh, our rules, the law and the rules don't matter, because they are literally working them in tandem, right? So they're in partners, so they get to decide what is for our safety, and what we're allowed to consume. And it really, they break down a lot more, or Glenn breaks down a lot more in there on how they are actually looking at right now and discussing how they have the rights and the property rights to our intellectual mindset. For everything that is in our brain, they actually believe they own it, and it's their responsibility and duty to control and manage what is in our brain. And if we aren't compliant, if it is an opinion that the government doesn't agree with, then they can, be equipped to do that. So uh, it's pretty diabolical. But this is the how the business side of it works to connect to the DEI, the ESG, and the public-private partnerships. That is the foundation. That is the agreements that binds between all of the United Nations agreements, the World Economic Forum, the WHO, the International Monetary Fund. These guys are all doing business to support and expand the public-private partnerships, and every time they do that, it's to take more and more control from whatever it is that they deem a threat or want to target. So from there, I'm going to kind of swing us over into what Witney Webb. Now, if you're not anybody's not familiar with Witney Webb, you've got a lot of learning to catch up on. She is probably one of the premier research analysts out there. I'm still waiting to hear back from when we can get a show together, where we can have her on personally. But she's doing so much work that's really, really relevant, and there's no way that I can talk better than the horse when it comes to that. So until we get Whitney, we're going to be stuck with listening to some of the things that she's telling some others right now, and some of it is pretty critical and definitely connected to what we see coming down the pipe in 2024, and what we're trying to shed the light on and educate on, and things that matter right now to help clear the noise. Because right now, between all of the gobbledygook, Epstein this, Epstein that, it's not to say there isn't merits to that entire story, but right now what they're doing with it is nothing but smoke and mirrors. There's no new information coming out that we didn't already know before. So there's more to it. When we get to the deeper parts of those kinds of stories, then that will be more relevant to everything going on. Right now, it is a huge distraction. A distraction from what? Some of the things we are working on most specifically. And I know that we're over the target, because I am getting so much abuse, so much censorship. That's kind of like a badge of honor when it comes to what's going on. So we're going to talk or listen to a little bit of Witney Webb on the Jimmy Dore show. Dory, as you can, I'm not subscribed to Jimmy's channel. I'm kind of only just recently starting to hear some of his guests and some of that kind of stuff. But I caught this interview, and it was so on point to connect the dots of this whole UBI, CBDC, digital crypto thing that they're trying to implement. That's what they're after. That's why the Epstein, that's why everything else that they are trying to do to distract us from is because we are onto them. And Whitney does such an amazing job here of going through that I just felt that was what you guys needed to hear and know was more from Whitney Webb. So we're gonna get started.
That is California, Palmdale, California, Omaha, Des Moines, Milwaukee, Lansing, Bend, Oregon, Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Washington.
See, it was so good I started at the end.
So talk a little bit about this. I saw this on YouTube, Witney Webb, Bitcoin and the plot to destroy financial privacy. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this was my speech at the Bitcoin conference earlier this year in May, and it was also turned into an article that was published in Bitcoin Magazine, which puts on that conference. So basically, the public-private partnership that I talked about earlier, that's run by an Israeli intelligence official that wants to name misinformation spreaders as cyber criminals. This speech is about them. They're planning essentially to end online anonymity and financial privacy. And as I mentioned earlier, the DOJ and the FBI and the Secret Service are all members. So are Israeli and UK intelligence, and so are all the big banks. Like Bank of America's on there. And then you've got like Silicon Valley companies. And
That's
this
why
WEF partnership against cybercrime, along with the Carnegie Endowment, has an equivalent program. Yeah, the two of them have been basically pushing for the end of online anonymity, or really online privacy and financial privacy, and also pushing to merge banking regulators and intelligence agencies in the US.
That's why.
Madness.
That's why.
And the guy that was in charge of Carnegie at the time is now CIA director under Biden. And they were basically saying that the way that this would be implemented would be through a big cyber attack on the banks.
That's why Jordan Peterson was calling. That's why Jordan Peterson was on talking about we need to end anonymity online, because he's
after
a
he
shill,
started hanging out with Netanyahu.
Yeah,
right.
he got paid by Daily Wire a while ago. He got a bunch of money. So him and Douglas Murray's a shill for his, and they're paid Douglas Murray's got all this new work done. Ever since the war started in Gaza, and he's out there, he looks like Sharon Osbourne before her surgery now. They're paid by Israel. They're shills. Jordan Peterson, that's why he was spouting that. He's like, anonymity is the problem.
Really?
And I remember being like, why is he saying that?
Nikki Haley too.
Why. Yeah, that's why. He sold the fuck out. That's why.
So in here in Glendale, California, there's a news headline yesterday that they've been a victim. Their school system has been a victim of a cyber attack.
Before we get into some more of that, this was something that I as disappointing as it is, it had been very obvious to me that something had happened with Jordan Peterson some time ago, and he was not, and that's not. I'm not confirming or denying anything as to what he has done, but he has not been the leading voice of reason that I choose to listen to when it comes to so much of this globalism that he is purporting to be against. I'm not buying it anymore. So it's interesting to hear some others bringing up this exalted hero, this prophet that's not really I think doing things with our best interest in mind. And again, I can't confirm or prove any of that, but he's just not the same person, and it's being noticed around the world.
And that the cyber attackers are demanding their ransom. So they installed ransomware on their system, and to get them to take it off, they want ransom, and they want it paid in Bitcoin. And so now I wouldn't doubt if that's the CIA doing that, so that people now see that, oh, we got to get rid of Bitcoin because you can't track terrorists and cyber terrorists because they use Bitcoin. So we have to get rid of this Bitcoin and this blockchain monetary system. Is that crazy?
They want to keep blockchain, but they want to criminalize private Bitcoin transactions.
And do you think that would be a good way for them to do it, a false flag like that?
A bunch of little ones like that on a school. And
yeah, well, they've already been building the narrative. So remember the whole October 7th thing? There was reporting that it was later debunked from the Wall Street Journal saying that Hamas financed October 7th using crypto donations, specifically Bitcoin. And then that turned out not to be the case, but it was spread around that, oh, Bitcoin and crypto are being used to fund terrorism. And all these congressmen in the US were like, let's regulate crypto now. Because it's being used to fund terrorism, so we need to surveil more closely crypto transactions to prevent that. I.e.,
that's one of the things that I wanted to just reinforce here with that. With the legacy media, mercenary media, mainstream corporate Marxist media, whatever you want to call them, I call them mercenaries. They're basically hired to kill people and hurt people. But that's what they do. Facts don't matter. They set the tone, they set the narrative, they jack up the emotion, and then they run with the response. And they will never correct, rarely correct, never issue a retraction. It's a weapon, and this is where they really needs to be discerning on the things that they allege when they're alleging terrorist activities, because as we showed last night, now they're looking at you and I as terrorists. So when they associate terrorism with crypto, that's really what they're setting the framework for and planting the seed for, is that if you support crypto or blockchain, then they're kind of putting you into that basket already.
Reducing financial privacy and online, right?
Then it came out it was really Bibi Netanyahu with suitcases of cash donating to them,
something like that. But part of the reason this is happening is because of how they want to, basically Wall Street in the US, these big banks that are part of this whole cybercrime thing are the ones that want to issue a CBDC for the US. It won't be called a CBDC because the central bank won't be issuing it directly, right? But Wall Street probably will be, and they want to be the ones surveilling and controlling and basically having complete control over your finances. And so financial privacy has to go out the window for that to be able to happen, whether it's a CBDC or a Wall Street issued digital dollar.
And so the head of the US Fed in Minneapolis, Kashkari, there's a video I just showed on the show this week. He's perplexed by the push for CBDCs because he says, why would an American want this? If I want to send money, I can use Venmo. There's other ways of digitally sending money and receiving money. Why do I need it from a centralized bank? What's in it for us? There's nothing in it for us. So why would a guy like him be allowed to say that? Hey.
Yeah, well, because in the US, the central bank, the Federal Reserve, is owned by the private banks. So they don't do anything the private banks don't want. And so if you have a direct issued CBDC, like is being piloted in like China and like these other countries around the world where the central bank is directly issuing that currency, basically, for every, in the US, it would mean that for every dollar produced, they would have to hold, one reserve backing it up, like a 1-to-1 ratio. But Wall Street doesn't want that because they engage in something called fractional reserve banking.
Right.
And that's the key, guys. Fractional reserve banking. That's what they do in Canada too. You've got $1 in the bank, they lend out 10 on your dollar, and banking on the fact that for all of the billions that they do that with, only a small fraction of us will ever take our money out of the bank. So there's it's always going to be there. So they're leveraging out your dollar at 10-to-1. So it's that's why this is public-private partnerships that are taking over the control of the central bank digital currency narrative.
Which is where basically like you deposit $1,000 in the bank and they keep like $10 and loan out the other 900, and that's why bank runs happen and banks go insolvent and all this stuff. But it also allows them to pump up these crazy Wall Street casinos, and they have no intention of changing their behavior at all. And so they can't have a direct issued CBDC and continue fractional reserve banking. So what they're trying to do is have something called deposit tokens, or bank issued stable coins, where they get to all these private banks, these Wall Street banks, hold the reserves and can do fractional reserve banking with it. Because if the Fed were doing it, then the Fed would have to keep it in that 1-to-1 ratio. But if Wall Street is doing it, then they can keep their insane casino going on forever. While also, surveilling Americans on behalf of intelligence, which is why you have this push I mentioned earlier to merge banks and intelligence agencies.
Now, if that doesn't make the hairs, your entire skin shiver and every hair stand up on your body, you guys hear that? Here in Canada, Canadians know we don't have an ounce of gold. We don't have a federal treasury to speak of. Everything is done through the central bank system, the international central bank system that is exactly leveraging the money as she described. These guys are not going to allow us to get away from their system in any way that isn't trackable. That's what it is to them. It's all about the data, all about the data points, the predictive programming, the sales programming, all of that consumer brainwashing and literal programming. I could go on endlessly about studies where they literally target public transit systems because they know people are going to be on their devices there, so they're X percentage more likely to buy something there. But if you aren't behaving and don't open the door for somebody, well, then they might restrict that too. But yeah, this is now we're getting into the power base of the coup. All crime is about the love of money. All of these guys want is money, and they want to control us to get more of our money. They are not going to be happy until we own nothing and are happy for anything they give us so we can survive, like universal basic income.
Going on with all of this. So instead of, Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve on behalf of the government programming and surveilling you through a CBDC, it will be Jamie Dimon doing it.
And Bill Gates is going to have his fingers in there somehow.
Of course. He's not one to miss out,
No. He'll write the software that does it or something like that.
Or steal the software.
Or steal the software. Exactly. I'm sorry. I misspoke. So it seems like we're at a real crisis point, right? There's a real tipping point. And do you think that do you see the American people or any people worldwide getting wise to this and having any kind of pushback? I think COVID kind of did wake people up to some things. And I think that kind of backfired for them, the COVID. That was like their test run.
Yeah, definitely.
It was like their test
run. And I think that's why censorship is escalating. They want to keep the info from spreading. And the next time there's a big event, they don't want the counter narrative to be freely available.
It's like a lot of dry run.
So what she means there is it backfired. It may appear that they won with installing their evil doctrine of total control and Marxism upon us, but it didn't. It's backfiring. And since then, they've created the most educated society in human history. And so she's right. The censorship is jacked up. The smear and attack campaigns are jacked up. This is why, because they are failing and flopping. They're not swans. They are nasty swamp ducks.
And all these things, just keep them coming, see which one sticks.
So what is your hunch on the future? Where do you see? So it's 2023. Where do you see us being in 2030? And do you think Trump will be any different?
So 2030, it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen between then and now. What I will say, as far as the cyber attack stuff, the World Economic Forum, their number 2 guy after Klaus Schwab, in January of this year, said that before 2025, there's going to be a massive cyber attack. And if you recall, Klaus Schwab during COVID said stuff like, oh, soon there will be a cyber pandemic that will, in comparison to COVID, make COVID look small by comparison.
March 2020. The longtime followers will remember where we broke that down, and it wasn't just Klaus Schwab that was saying that. There was some leaked reports confirming that. So this is again a long time in the works, and it's coming apart really, really quickly. So they are speeding up. I think it was just came out today. I was reading somewhere that Agenda 2030 is now officially Agenda 2025. They've sped up their targets by 5 years.
Paraphrasing, but something like that. So the risk of that happening soon, something like that, is very high. And of course, if something like that does happen in the US, there will be a Cyber Patriot Act that will be rushed through. And some particular nation state, we can probably guess which ones will be blamed. And as has been the case up to this point, when a nation state, whether it's Iran, China, or Russia, or any of the bad guys, are blamed, the reasons for attribution are practically non-existent, or it's all intelligence fronts attributing the blame. Like this recent one blaming China for infiltrating US infrastructure was this company called Recorded Future that was created with In-Q-Tel money. That's the CIA. Yeah. And there was no pushback on that all from the media, just this headline of China's infiltrating everything. So imagine if a big cyber attack happens, how that will be.
Whitney,
when that happens, the enemy, it's very clear, is going to be privacy. No one can be online. We have to know who everyone is online to stop these acts of cyber terrorism, whether that act of cyber terrorism is misinformation or a big hack or critical infrastructure goes down. It could be all of those things. It could be one of those things. It doesn't really matter. And if you think about stuff like the anthrax attack in 2001 and the panic that generated, that killed under 10 people. But was just the fear and panic from it was able to push through a ton of biosecurity legislation that helped bring us what happened during COVID-19. So they don't necessarily need a big death count, but the head of DHS said that the next cyber attack is going to be killware, which definitely sounds scary.
Come on.
Yeah, but look it up. Well, Mayorkas talking about killware, saying it's the next big thing in cybersecurity. Yeah. So, people should be really aware that this is going to happen, and there's going to be a push to link your ID, your government issued ID, it'll be a digital ID because of where things are going, to your internet access.
There it is, the digital ID. It's all about the privacy and control and elimination of implied consent. And one of the things that, going back to what Beck said earlier, in Canada, he mentioned that if they get away with it, it's legal. Well, in Canada, they look at it as if you don't say no, then you implied yes. So up here, we work through implied consent. If we didn't say no, then we must have meant yes. Whether we are aware or not, they assume we said yes. So those are one of the slight differences. But this has all been going on since 9/11, the implementation of the Big Brother security state. Ever since then, primarily our rules and laws have been continuously shrinking and receding to the point here now where we will have absolutely no privileges or rights even to access our bank accounts, our financial institutions, money, or even the internet. This is all interconnected.
And this has been the goal from a very long time, going back to when after 9/11, they tried to create total information awareness, the DARPA program. They want to know not just what you're posting online, they want to see what you're reading online also. Literally everything you do online, all your financial activity, they want all of it.
Like Jesus
and
has?
If you listen, it's wild.
As funny as that is, but that's literally why it's like a religion to them. They want to know everything, every minuscule thought in our brain and that we interact in a day. The only person that needs to know that much is Jesus.
And if you listen to people like Eric Schmidt, who was recently talking about what he feels like needs to be done to stop misinformation.
Eric Schmidt is the former head of Google.
Misinformation. I'm sorry.
To tell people who Eric Schmidt is.
He's the former CEO of Google. Basically, Henry Kissinger named him his heir before he died.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's the guy that's funding the salaries of the people in the Biden administration, which should be totally illegal, by the way. And completely dominates science and technology policy for the Biden administration.
And what did he say?
That people who publish or post misinformation on social media should be reported to law enforcement.
Well, Osama bin Rogan is still at large.
So how do we protect our money?
That's a really good question. So, I am not like a financial expert or advisor, so I don't feel comfortable telling people exactly where to put their money. But what I do personally is I try and put my money in things I will need if the world gets totally insane. So I don't have to worry about feeding my family, how I'm gonna like have lights on in my house and all sorts of stuff like
guns.
that.
Guns and gold.
I mean, whatever works for you, but I think what's important for people is to sort of think through this stuff because, knowing people, for example, in Argentina, their economy collapsed in 2001. For talking to people who lived through that, they've all said that if you give into the panic, that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Like mental preparedness is very important. And that doesn't cost anything, does it? And also the internet's going to be heavily censored, it would make sense to back up information you care and value and you think you might need in the future offline also. So
when you say you
really important points, and that's one of the things I enjoyed about this particular little interview was she brought up a lot of things we can do, and she'll bring up more of that as it goes on here, but that's kind of becoming a consensus item. It's one thing to have enough food stock supply for a few weeks, a couple of months, but those that can at least partially self-sustain, being able to grow and have access to sustainable goods is an important thing to consider moving forward. And not even just for the insanity that we see coming. If it was, just to think back to the dirty 30s, life could get kind of like that, where survival is a little bit more extended. There's going to be some time required, and that's the skills that people are missing. It's been taken away from people how to grow, how to self-sustain. The government does not want us learning how to self-sustain because then we are not as dependent. So join a gardening group, join a chicken club, whatever it is. There's a way to sustain your nutritional needs, but if you're not thinking about that, find some people who are.
You put your money into things that you need. What do you mean by that?
Well, so like I live in Chile, so it's a lot easier for me than it would have been if I lived in the US still. But I bought a little plot of land and saved up for like 15 years and have a little house on it, so I don't have to pay rent anymore. Gonna try and grow as much of my own food as possible. Have sort of my own water supply, stuff like that. I mean, not obviously it's going to look different for everyone based on, your situation. Maybe stock up on, a couple weeks of groceries or something if stuff goes insane. I mean, we saw what happened with COVID where everything got shut down for a couple weeks. What happens if some crazy crisis happens and, the grocery stores aren't working normally or you can't get into one normally.
Order from Amazon again because they were still open.
And that is exactly why we're partnered with the Patriot Switch movement. They lock things down again. We won't be left wanting or needing. It's pretty much, you can pretty much bet on it. That's one of they always go back to the same playbook. So guys, that's definitely another reason to get involved in alternative supply, and getting from Amazon is just feeding the same beast. So you're still at the mercy of the same monsters. So learn how to grow some food. It's pretty easy. We've even got things for that on our website. You can get gardens, indoor vertical gardening systems. You can get some silver and gold, and you can get the other things that you won't be able to get in a lockdown.
Or pay with your palm to get your well, it's crazy. The UN is moving all of their humanitarian assistance programs to basically like the WorldCoin model, like scan your eyeball. If you want, your humanitarian rations. It's called Building Blocks, the World Food Program. Insanely Orwellian. They onboarded like millions of Ukrainians onto that recently. But a lot of Palestinian refugees in Jordan have been living like that for years. And people around the world, and they're basically like, oh, you want food? You want to live? Give us your iris scan. Not cool.
No, not cool. So, hey, what about India? Didn't they go fully digital ID?
Yeah, the Aadhaar program that was it's somewhat Bill Gates affiliated. This billionaire, this Indian billionaire was behind it, and he's very cozy with Bill Gates. And there's been a lot of problems with it where like if the system decides you aren't you get blocked out of everything. And that's happened to many people.
Yes.
It's already happening here. I've heard of people been locked out of their media accounts, and the media says that's not enough proof that it's you. And no matter you give them all of the proof the government wants, they decide, no, it's not you. So the extension of that to the banking and the financial sector should be absolutely another one of those things that should make your skin crawl. But the good news is it didn't work in India either.
People, I've heard stories or read stories of that happening to people in India. They can't get food, and they actually, some of them died.
Who do they call for customer service? Because I call them usually. Like, who do they? Do they have another country that?
Why was India the first country to do this, you think?
Well, because all this kind of stuff, like the digital ID stuff specifically, is tested on very vulnerable populations who can't say no.
Remember the central digital currency that failed spectacularly? Modi said money's going to be illegal, like cash is going to be illegal.
They did do that.
Or worthless. Yeah, it was a disaster.
But they didn't bring cash back, did they? They're still going digital or no? And
so to simplify that part of it, they implemented it. It didn't work. It's still there, floundering and flopping around like a dying rotten fish nobody's going to eat.
In India, I mean. Do you know?
I'm not familiar with how India is developing it right now.
Okay. All right. Well,
in terms of currency, but the Aadhaar system is still definitely there, and I think very problematic. And people get their data stolen from it all the time. It's like not safe. Gets hacked all the time.
Oh boy.
They say it's safer and to keep people from like defrauding their benefits, even though there's no evidence that people are doing that.
Now I know why they kept talking about internet access as a human right in undeveloped nations, which it's not.
It's not.
Because all these poor people are just walking around untracked. We don't have any other data. They were just out there in the wasteland, not getting their rights for us to
untracked by Google, untracked by the banks. So that's what they all need to be onboarded to the slavery system.
Okay, well,
because every person running around all over the entire planet, even in the most desolate places in Africa, they need $1,000 iPhone so that they can track everything that they're saying, thinking, or doing. Right? That's the plan.
Well, Witney Webb, thank you for making time for us. I appreciate appreciate all the information. Everybody, check out her book, One Nation Under Blackmail. And wow, it's scary. So are you a pessimist or an optimist about the future?
No, I'm pretty.
No, Witney was gonna go, but she decided to stay, and that was the goal. This is the part of this I hope you guys stick around and listen to.
Optimistic about it because I think people have really had enough, but I think people need to keep in mind too that like the online information space even now, is more manipulated than it's ever been. And I think most Americans and people generally are just really like checked out and really aren't buying all of this. And so much is going on. There's so many like sophisticated bots in this chat GPT era that are trying to make us feel pessimistic, I think. Because if people, I mean, I feel like this happened in 2016 where they tried to demoralize people by being like putting out all these polls saying like Hillary Clinton's definitely going to win. It's like 99% probable. And then it wasn't like that at all. I think they do that kind of influence ops all the time to try and, demoralize people. And so I think it's very important to spend time in the real world and not just online, specifically when you're trying to gauge public opinion about these things. And when you do that, it's very hard not to be hopeful because people get it. And I think, whether in the US or Chile, I mean, people know that the big banks, the powerful corporations, and the politicians who are in bed with them steal from the people and want to keep stealing. And if you, approach it from that, people get that and don't want that to continue and are fed up and sort of checked out, but if you go online, I mean, it's a totally different world half the time. So it helps to unplug to keep your head straight.
Hey, Witney, I have one quick question. I know you just have a minute, but I've been watching a lot of Tony Blair, and he's really big on digital ID and all of that, but he seems to be getting a lot of pushback. What are your observations about Tony Blair?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, Tony Blair is, he's like the Bill Clinton of Britain. He's, very in bed with a lot of these agendas and very willing to sell out people whether it's British people or really anyone else to, the corporate overlords. As far as digital ID goes, I mean, that's been his new thing ever since he founded the Tony Blair Institute for Change or whatever it's called. But when he was Prime Minister of Britain, he was pushing to have a government issued ID in Britain. And there was a lot of pushback against it because of concerns about, Orwellian actions by the state. But of course, there's a big push to have it happen sort of anyway in Britain now. But he's trying to implement that same program elsewhere as well, and definitely pushing for a lot of this digital ID stuff, which the idea of the whole digital ID thing is to have this one ID tied to literally everything you do, including all of your online activity, your medical history, your cell phone carrier, your travel. I mean, literally everything. Have all of this in one centralized place that, is very likely that basically intelligence agencies are going to use to surveil you. And the real danger of it is that they're going to use this to sort of do predictive policing is what they call, which is what Palantir, the contractor for all of this in the US, has been doing for a long time to try and predict crime before it happens. And there was a big push for this under the Trump administration. From William Barr specifically, he said it was about stopping mass shootings before they can happen. And they were trying to create this organization modeled after DARPA called HARPA, which Biden actually made. It's called ARPA-H. They just moved one letter to the end.
Oh my God.
From Trump's.
They don't predict shit. But
I know, but it was putting... I know, but it's not about that. That's what they say it's about. There's a public justification, right? And so basically they wanted to put AI and
it's for your safety. They're going to predict criminals before they commit crimes, and they can do this by tracking every blink you make.
In charge of going through people's social media history to identify warning signs in people who might be violent in the future, and all of this stuff. So if you apply this to all this other misinformation stuff and treating misinformation, which we know is just information the state doesn't agree with most of the time, to a crime or to terrorism, it starts to get really insane. And the best way to stop this is to opt out of big tech and opt out of big social media and start building or looking for some sort of alternative, because they're very complacent in the sense that they think everyone's going to stay dependent on all of these platforms and services. And we can make alternatives, or we can do something else. We don't have to use, Google and Microsoft, who are all contractors with the IDF and, US intelligence and the government and all of this stuff. We don't have to do that. We can do something else. And then it all falls apart for them if we starve them of our data.
That's right.
Exactly. From Whitney's lips to God's ear, this is how we beat them. We don't beat them by continuing to use their system. We make new systems and make the old ones obsolete. This is, so much of what people that have been following here for a long time will have been hearing me preach from the mountaintops for all I'm worth. That's why we built and developed LGM.news. It's why we got into partnerships with Patriot Switch, New World Precious Metals, the Grow Gardens. These are the reasons why we beat them by just not taking part. And when it comes time to use our voices, do not let fear get in the way. We are far more powerful than what they want us to believe. They want us to believe that this is inevitable. It cannot be stopped. It's all over. It's coming. And that is so far from the truth. If that were the reality, they wouldn't need censorship. They wouldn't need abuse. They wouldn't need fascist style tactics. They wouldn't need to hunt down, persecute, and prosecute any single person that raised a question or an objection. The fact that they are, firing every weapon that they have at us right now is the clearest indicator of all that they are coming apart.
That's great.
I've just read an article this morning, and I think it's adorable that they're warning that if the liberal class doesn't stand up for workers, that we're going to have fascism will come to America, and it's going to become in the guise of Trump and his Christian fascists. And I'm like, where the fuck have you been living for the last 10 years? We've been living in a completely fascist surveillance state since 9/11 to fucking begin with. They are Barack Obama. The liberal class are the fascists. There's not some other fascists coming.
I would say they're all pretty much fascists at the end of the day.
Yes.
Both sides of the purple party.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. This idea. I mean, people out there who I respect are still saying, yo, the fascism's coming and it's only going to be a certain type of fashion. It's like, you fucking morons. And
well, we got to
be. I mean, the Democrats right now are like largely financed and controlled by people like Eric Schmidt and Reid Hoffman, all these Silicon Valley billionaires, and a lot of their companies are completely fused with U.S. intelligence.
Yes.
Completely fused. I mean, the CIA helped create Google. The CIA helped create Palantir, Peter Thiel's company, who's a big Republican donor. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're all.
That's right. So what I'm saying is fascism
there's nothing more
here.
fascist than Silicon Valley. We should really stop using their products. If you want fascism to stop, I think that would be a good starting point.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a childish idea that fascism isn't already here. I had I hate to keep bringing him up but Cornel West, he was here. He was saying, he's calling Trump a neo-fascist, and he wouldn't apply that. I'm like, we live, and that if we aren't careful, fascism's going to come to America. It's been here for a long time. What fucking world are you living in that you don't see the fascism's here, and you can't see it? It's right in front of your fucking face, and you can't see it. Holy shit! How worth? Anyway, I have to let you go. Thank you.
Please come back.
Please come back, Whitney. It's always great to talk to you.
Sure, whenever.
All right, guys. That was so much energy at the end there from Jimmy, and they're so right though. They have been, Germany didn't turn into what we remember it as in a minute. Hitler came into power in 1923. The World War didn't start till 1939. So he had 17 years. Trudeau's had 8, and he's almost accomplished what Hitler did in 8 years as what Hitler took 17 to do. And he's only been able to do this because of the World Economic Forum. The Mr. Proud Shining Fourth Reich leader extraordinaire has infiltrated the cabinets and the parties. And unfortunately, this is exactly how they've done it, through these public-private partnerships, through these companies and organizations that the companies control the politicians, the ones we call sponsors. And these guys are all plugged into the ESG, DEI, and that is the Fourth Reich. That is fascism here implemented. The only thing that they now need is to put a the hammer down, the jackboot down, and demand compliance. It's compliance that is the next waves, and they're going to do that. Communism 101: control the food, control the people, control the money, you control the food, you control the people. So there's a whole lot going on, but these are the things that we have to be aware of, prepared for, have the right information, the right articulation. Grammar matters now more than ever, and it's something that I'm still working on some days, apparently. But anyway, that's where we're at. I hope this is all connecting some of the dots, and Saturday is going to really give everybody what they can do to move forward and make Trudeau's worst fears his worst realities, because they're interconnected around the entire planet. It doesn't matter whether you're in New Zealand or America or Canada, UK, Netherlands. It's all the same thing, the same the same point of origin. Brussels and Davos are literally controlling the world through these agreements, and that's the essence of what the UNSDA, the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda, was: a list of public-private partnership objectives to be obtained in all of the countries that signed onto it. So this is less to do about individual politicians as it is about parties. You heard Whitney refer to the Purple Party in the States. Well, Canada's pretty much the same thing: left wing, right wing, same sick bird, right? It's exactly the New World Mafia. It's a crime syndicate. It's the Fourth Reich rebranded. The WHO treaty. All of these things are the pot boiling. We are there. It's been warming up, heating up for a very long time, and they want to see the fulfillment of their evil worshipping ideology being implemented. So that's tonight's show, guys. Not quite sure yet, waiting for confirmation. We might have an interview tomorrow, but the big deal for this week is on Saturday. Wherever you find this, whatsupcanada.org, LGM, all of the different places that you can find us, we will be out there. And on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Appreciate the likes, the shares, the support. We're getting into some really good stuff. You probably have to go to the bottom of the timeline to find me. Check your subscription. Make sure you're subscribed. Give this a like and a share, and we will see you all tomorrow. When I find my way out. I need a little bit more practice, apparently. Bye for now. I love you all.